Welcome to another edition of the Sigma podcast today. Myself, Trevor DeGiorgio, hosting Philip Bugeja with us. Philip, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Pleasure being here again.
Philip, with whom we'll be delving into the world of AI and RG, but with Philip we'll also jump a bit into the subject of AI and AML in order to then lead into what will be our next series of podcasts coming up in the next few weeks. But coming into the subject of AI and RG. First off, Philip, your background, you've got experience in the RegTech world, experience in KYC, experience in AML,
For sure.
a bit of experience in RG,
Exactly.
and quite a lot of knowledge on AI. Just marry all of what I've just said together, if you don't mind, for the benefit of our viewers.
For sure. So basically, we started off with an anti-money laundering consultancy, which kicked off in 2020. Furthermore, then we decided to expand a little bit better into the technical side of it and also to assist those in the industry to obtain better results, more focused. We understand that AML regulations are getting much stricter, and there's a lot more to do. So what we aim to do is to develop the technology which assists MLROs, teams, investigations, analysis into, let's call it this way, simplifying their job, reducing a lot of the heavy manual work and reducing a lot of the load, also assisting in obtaining much better results, much better conclusions when it comes to investigations, when it comes to analysis, when it comes to simplifying onboardings, when it comes to the obligations of ongoing monitoring. So what we're doing is patching all these pieces together, which we've successfully done so far, to create an end-to-end solution, let's call it this way, when it comes to consultancy, when it comes to the actual implementation. These are tools which we have at hand to assist basically clients better.
Okay. There is a lot which has got to do with AML. And to a certain extent, I find that some of the checks from an AML front also marry into RG.
Very good. Yeah, exactly.
At what level do you see that?
In any case, so usually in most situations when you get triggers of RG, the first analysis is to eliminate the RG and to see if it potentially steps over onto AML.
Okay.
So when investigations do kick off or internal investigations do kick off, obviously with tools, certain analysis, certain data, certain even open source intelligence at that point, it helps mitigate and helps you understand what are you actually looking at.
Okay.
So if you're investigating a crime, let's call it a crime.
Okay. Because AML, money laundering, is a crime.
So there are different ways of looking into the crime and the predicate offense. Although in certain situations, let's be clear, you won't know.
You say predicate
So,
offense.
for example, are you looking at a fraud? Are you looking at drug trafficking? Are you looking at... There are multiple corruption, bribery, there's a whole endless list, human trafficking, all those. So it depends on the crime or what you suspect the crime is.
Okay.
And the way you're going to approach it. Obviously, no two crimes are alike. But the MO of the crime, modus operandi, the way it carries out, there are certain similarities in it. Now, you're looking at certain jurisdictions, you're looking at certain types of deposits, certain types of withdrawals, certain types of potentially even similarities in certain requests. So they're all different. When it comes to RG is a separate topic then. There is an element of sort of desperation in it, and you do recognize this element of desperation, especially when you have someone which, unfortunately, it's an addiction. It comes across in a very different way. Although you need to eliminate the element of AML, because if it's an addiction, you don't know to what extent the person is going to go to obtain certain amounts of funds to sort of sustain his gambling habit.
And this is why sometimes they intersect with each other, because sometimes, unfortunately, people resort to crime in order to fuel their addiction.
There are different things. We can see, for example, from illegal loans, which is mostly those are the cases, a lot of lending from different people, which will then can lead to another issue, which is usury and whatnot. So we do need to look at them from both perspectives. Now, obtaining information alone, yes, sometimes they're not willing to provide. So you need to have a holistic approach. And yes, you have to consider certain elements of AML when you're dealing with issues of RG.
Okay.
Depending, again, on the extent of the issue of RG. It's different to have someone playing 100 to 100 a week and he's unemployed, to someone who is unemployed, earning a decent salary, but then he's paying hundreds and thousands. That's a different story.
Okay. So we've seen that RG and AML, to a certain extent, do intertwine, and you need to go through the process of seeing whether it's one or the other, or in certain cases, both of them mixed together. Does AI help in any manner whatsoever over there?
So in every situation, it's all about creating a profile.
A player profile or a behavior profile?
Behavior, player, it's all, let's call it to a certain extent, it's not, but it's a certain element of profiling.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm looking at you and I'm profiling, maybe it's a different.
That's what it happened on the way here.
When we're looking at profiling, we are not seeing the individual. Certain things we can't profile them. But what we can profile is certain actions, certain behaviors, certain timings, certain logins, certain logouts. I'm giving a very, very brief overview.
But you are the fourth guest in the series.
All right.
All four have spoken about this.
Yes.
Not directly saying profiling, but data. And saying, for example, erratic behavior, which usually, for example, large sums at one go at night, is an indicator, is part of the profile. Hence, what we had JJ got yesterday, and JJ spoke that sometimes it's also important to give context, and this is where the human element comes in. And sorry, I'm interrupting, but
for sure.
in your case, how important is it? I'm going to ask the same question I asked to JJ. Should AI take over?
No.
Or should AI be a tool which assists the human who can sometimes, or most of the time, give the context to possibly that behavior?
AI can take over certain tasks. It can't take over the full task.
Okay.
AI can take over certain data analytics, certain withdrawing certain patterns, learn from certain patterns as well. Not always going to be correct.
Okay.
Because patterns do change.
Yes, because circumstances change.
Exactly. Especially if you're setting certain thresholds for the AI, you always need an element of human intervention. When it comes to AML, when it comes to RG, piecing all the pieces together from different softwares, different analysis. I'm not saying an emotion element of the person looking at the case, but there are certain things which will trigger more questions or trigger more responses. So let's take someone these days who's addicted to these AI apps, relationships app, anything. We have had some cases where we've seen, just as a general study to understand better our tools and their technology. We have seen certain cases where a person starts logging in once a day, it's fine, that's it. But then they automatically start to rely on it, which then becomes dangerous. And it is a mindset which can be a form of addiction as well to these tools and technology. You start saying that every decision they make, they're questioning it.
Okay.
Every decision.
On a personal level?
On a personal level.
And even on a work level?
Even certainly on a work level, you can find it as well, where it's doing all the work for you, which to a certain extent is noticeable. You start seeing certain elements, and we've seen on a test done, basically internally between us on what happens if you had to do so. It's very easy to become dependent on it, and it's very easy to chat to. Okay?
To chat?
To talk to, basically.
Okay.
If you're in an uncomfortable situation, some people these days, we see them grab their phone and just go on one of these apps and say, I'm feeling uncomfortable in this situation. And it gives you what you should possibly do. That becomes a problem.
Because you rely on it
You
for your
rely on
decision.
it too much. Then you start seeing the logins, which start to increase and increase and increase and increase. Then you start saying that during the night you got a thought and you logged in again. That becomes a heavy dependency on
AI.
It's a heavy dependency on AI, and it's also, in a way, it's going to impair your ability to think as well. I'm not a psychologist, but if you're going to constantly rely on something else and not take the time to analyze the situation yourself, understand the facts, and come up with the reasoning like we used to do 10 years ago, it can be a problem.
And you've just said it. In the space of 10 years, we've seen a huge change.
Massive.
We've seen a huge change. I mean, it's not just in the gaming world, which is the world, which is basically this podcast is about gaming, but we're talking here also about the human element.
Of course.
And with AI, this is something which we've seen in these, because yours is the closing part of this 4-part series on AI in RG. But we've discussed that in certain cases you can see an over-reliance on AI.
Yes.
And most of the times, you can't just give a simple command You need to give the context. This is one thing also which came out, the importance of context.
You need to challenge it.
In what sense, Philip?
In most situations, let's take the simplest of apps so that everyone will understand. ChatGPT, for example. If you say certain things, let's say you want to paint a wall, and you say, I'm using this paint, is this good? It's going to tell you yes. But if you then reply and say, I don't think this is good, the label says otherwise, it can apologize and tell you, let me reevaluate the context.
Yes.
So
you need to give the full picture.
Apart from giving the full picture, you need to challenge the full picture as well. In fact, the way I see it, even when we started building these tools, became sort of a legal debate. Are you sure? Is this the case? Even when we deal with our tech teams, that was constantly sort of our back and forth. But why is this result being there? Why is this being given? Why is this data set there? Did we challenge it? I'm finding different findings. Let's challenge the findings again. So in building these things, there's
a process.
It's a very big process. It's a huge process. But there's also a lot of objectivity to it.
There are some, I mean, quite a few people believe that it's just simply a flip of the switch with AI, whilst in actual fact, it's a process.
Yeah, on certain things, yes. On
Such
certain
as?
data analysis, extracting certain types of data, finding certain key factors, they need to be analyzed, but you're getting the information much faster. You're getting data sets much faster.
No, but I'm saying it's just that easy to get the data, when in reality, you should be challenging or questioning where is your source.
You need to challenge, first of all, you need to be sure of the data you're going to input to it. You need to challenge as well certain cases that alerts come out from, like our system generates alerts, for example. You still need to look into the alerts and challenge the alerts to a certain extent, because it's just reading data sets. And then there's also the human element, which we discussed, which needs to take a step out and see it holistically as a whole.
The context which is required.
Exactly.
Are you seeing, even though we have AI, are there still weaknesses in the manner in which we are monitoring player behavior? Let's go from an RG perspective, and then I'd like to jump into the AML, because I think time now is not our friend anymore.
Okay. Weaknesses. There are weaknesses on both elements, both on the AML front and both on the RG front. When we're looking at the data sets it's providing, as we said, the profiling element, I'm going to skip to the profiling again. It's very, very, very important. What are we looking at? Who's the person? What are the patterns? What are the player behaviors? What's happening? What's the timing? You need to then, the human element, evaluate certain types of responses, evaluate certain types of data. Was there tampering with certain documentation? Are they really trying to hide that they have a gambling problem, or is it an element of money laundering again? So all these data sets, everything you find, everything you obtain from open sources, everything that you feed into the AI tools, any tools you have embedded into your system, which is detecting these types of behaviors as well. Again, it's all an element of profiling, understanding what you're looking at, understanding all the data, evaluating all the data in it as well, and then you can come to a reasonable conclusion. In certain situations, you're still not able to come to a reasonable conclusion.
We're looking at developments now, AI into AML, because it's going to be our next series. So starting off, there's been a lot of development of AI in RG. Are we seeing the same sort of speed, pace, innovation in AML?
AML is split into different sections though. So when we're dealing with AML, we've got the KYC, there's the onboarding, there's the, for example, verification of monitoring, proof of address, proof of ID, certain selfies, certain verification, certain biometrics. Then you've got the other element to it, which is transaction monitoring, analysis of transactions, setting thresholds, reporting, drafting certain types of reports as well, obtaining open source intelligence to substantiate certain cases. So there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of elements to it. Obviously, these need to be broken down depending on the task you're handling. So if it's transaction monitoring, it's one thing. If it's KYC, it's another thing. And then holistically grouping everything together, again, to create a proper profile. So yes, there are a lot of advancements. There are a lot of moving elements. There are a lot of companies who are making very, very serious progress on this. I've seen recently quite a number of tools as well which have made substantial progress.
When you're saying tools, progress, companies, are you talking about gaming companies themselves, or are you talking about third-party providers who provide these services?
Mostly are third-party providers who are focused on one specific thing.
Creating the software.
Creating the software. And the most advancement we've seen are from these companies who are obviously fully focused on creating this type of software. They integrate with other parties as well to provide their services, but their main software would be, for example, the transaction monitoring part. There we have seen massive improvement when it comes to even understanding certain transactions, learning from mistakes of clearing certain transactions as well.
When you say clearing.
So, for example, if you have something suspicious, which wasn't suspicious, and the alert pops up again on a different type of player, learning from the system itself gets that information, puts it onto the other one.
So you're talking about system learning, which is part of AI, right?
It is part of AI. And also, it can even, the systems we've seen recently, because we scan through most of these systems, we do not provide these systems, but we scan through most of them to help our clients basically select the right ones. Most of them even give you indications on what you did in the previous case in simple bullet points. As in, you had these 3 cases which are similar to this case. This is what you did in all these 3 cases. Do you would like adapt this? So it is helping, and it's even triggering certain psychological notes to make you remember what you did in the past.
Okay.
Certain things you don't remember, but then you say something small. Say, all right, I remember that case.
Okay.
So it's quite good.
So you're almost looking into the element of precedent
Yes.
in AML and its monitoring of transactions.
Exactly.
Okay.
Even certain commonalities you see, even without, usually when you're really focused on one thing, let's say transaction monitoring, for example, or on KYC. You start remembering certain things. For example, when I was a KYC agent back in the days, or when we even now test certain cases, if you're saying a lot of ID cards, you'll immediately spot that you've seen this person somewhere else on another software or another.
Because the image remains.
Because the image sort of remains. There's easy that, sometimes you see something and say, I've seen this before somewhere, but you can't pinpoint where. Now, the software itself now will actually confirm it for that. Listen, you have seen this before.
Okay.
We have it stored over here.
I still remember one of the best incidents I ever had was when I was working for Green Tube, and one of the agents, monitoring agents, I hear a loud laugh and then lots of noise, and I walked out and I said, what is going on? He said, look at this idiot. He tried to screw us over using this ID card.
Okay.
Which was a British ID card, but with the face of Kimi Raikkonen on it.
Okay.
Which was,
Now, we've seen everything from Spider-Man to Superman.
No, but Kimi Raikkonen on an ID card is brilliant.
I think people with you can't even imagine what we've seen. When especially we start processing, we start testing, obviously we need to feed it to learn as well certain types of information, see what the results are going to be. So we do give our systems quite a hard time.
Okay.
In trying to understand.
So we've seen players, they have evolved in the methods they've used, and we've seen operators also having to evolve in the methods they've used.
And what one needs to understand is when something kicks in, there's always something else who's going to try to breach that thing. So now we're saying AI. Obviously, a new crime wave came out of AI as well.
Yeah, using AI to fake documents.
To try to manipulate certain systems. So now the next thing is going to be how to manipulate the AI to a certain extent that is believable. So for every sort of shield we create, there's always going to be the next step for the sort of, let's call it the criminal or the perpetrator, to try to breach that and get through. Like when we started creating certain types of passwords, because they weren't easily cracked. So it's always an evolution.
It's like Newton. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Talking about every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Legislation it takes longer to change than technology. We always talk about technological neutrality in legislation, but unfortunately, we don't always see that. One thing that doesn't change is your reporting obligations.
For sure.
BRAs, business risk assessments, customer risk assessments. What has the trend been over these past few years, Philip, on that front?
So I think there is a lot of misconception going on the business risk assessment.
In what sense?
In what sense? Basically, we've seen certain penalties recently. We've evaluated. We have clients.
But this is on a Malta front?
On an international front, basically.
As well.
Business risk assessment is something which is very hard to understand. And unfortunately, it's interpreted in a in the wrong way. Very blunt. You need to understand risks that can attack the business without any controls in place. You can't assess a risk of a business when there are controls in place because you don't have full overview. What people also fail to include is certain perceived types of risk. What are the limitations of the risks? Sort of, let's call them the risk factors you're going to include in your BRA as well. So unfortunately, these are not set in stone. So what you might think, I might not think as well. Or maybe my risk factors are a little bit more than yours, or you don't have a full oversight. So tools actually do help to identify what the actual risk factors are for your business, based on previous alerts, based on information you've gathered and whatnot. When it comes to CRA, although it is automated, depends on the type of business.
Okay, you just said CRA is automated. In what sense?
So if a customer, let's call it the customer risk assessment, there are two fronts. There's the KYB and the KYC front.
Know your business.
So know your business and know your customer. When you're dealing with know your business, we still, even although it's automated, prefer if there is an element of human interaction. Why? Because you're understanding business, you're understanding what you're looking at, you become familiar with the whole situation. These are less volume-based, so you are going to have the time to do it. When you're dealing with KYC, you're dealing with volume and you can't go in through each and every one and analyze each and every one.
This is why automation is key.
Spend 10-20 minutes on every case to understand that player profile and whatnot. So that's why the automation is key. The ongoing monitoring is key to be automated as well. And then you analyze the triggers and alert from the shifts, patterns, subsets. You can subcategorize, you can create all types of things. Basically, you can create certain players of a certain range with a certain budget into one subset, and then if they step out, you pick up on that as well. It's very, very different. Now, when it comes to the BRA, most misconceptions, whether it should be in Excel, whether it should be in Word, whether it should be both, what do we put in it? It's always important that in my opinion, there's no wrong BRA. Unless it's deliberate, there's no wrong BRA. Because if I had to get the man off the street and explain the situation, most probably he'll still give me a form of a solution for that not to happen. If I tell him, listen, they can steal my house, he'll tell you, lock the door. Which in common sense, that is a proper risk mitigator. So when it comes to these types of things, especially when it comes to the BRA, AI and certain tools and certain technologies are going to help. Obviously, understanding trends, typologies, how it can affect your business, what doors you can never close for your business is also very important. Certain things we cannot control. I cannot control who's going to be my client. But as long as the mitigation is there and you have factors which can block it in, segregate it, trigger an alert, then you should be fine.
Philip, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us today. Really appreciate your insights. I thank you, the viewers of the Sigma World podcast. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the page of Sigma World in order to keep up to date with what we are doing over here. We're trying to produce quality content, concise as well, not too long. And we will be back with a new series in the coming weeks relating to AML, as we introduced today during this podcast. Thank you once again. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Trevor.
And have a good day.